Alrighty guys, welcome back to the 5th episode of the Strength Institute podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like, subscribe on YouTube to help build the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Today we have Dan Macri here.
What's going on?
Dan is a strongman with a bit of a history in strength sports in general. So we're going to be touching on everything today from powerlifting, strongman, how to set up a competition, injuries, pretty much the whole lot. So Dan, thanks very much for coming on.
Oh, absolute pleasure, man. It's happy to be here.
Awesome. Dan actually is the guy that got me into strongman back in 2010. We were actually doing a exercise and sports science degree at university, and I heard Dan, I overheard this guy talking to someone else about the numbers he was squatting, and I was thinking in the back of my head, I turned around and there's this big guy and said, well, this guy is either full of it, he's either lying or there's something going on here. So I moseyed on over, I slipped in and I said, I heard you talking about your squat and it sounded really impressive. So what's going on here? And Dan's like, I actually did powerlifting and I do strongman. And he asked me what I squatted. I told him it wasn't that much at the time. Still not that much, but it's better now than what it was. And Dan said, why don't you come up and train at my house? And that's the sort of guy Dan is. He took me right in and then introduced me to this world of strength sports, and I haven't looked back since. So Dan, can you just tell everyone how you got into strongman and or if you did, what you did before that as well?
Yeah, look, a somewhat interesting story, I guess. When I was 14, I'd sort of had been playing rugby for a couple of years, was starting to get a little bit more serious about it and looking towards making some state teams. Thought it'd be good to jump into the gym, kind of get a bit stronger. Not that I wasn't strong, but it's kind of like maximizing my best attribute, because I'm big guy, so I'm never going to have quite the cardio, so just get as strong as I can, build up the cardio as much as I can, but be as good as I can at, plus lifting things was fun. Got into the gym, started training. The trainer that I had at that point in time was like, hey, you are really, really strong. There's a powerlifting comp on in a couple of weekends' time. Why don't you do it? It actually happened to be my 15th birthday, so jumped in and gave it a shot. And with no technique and no real idea what I was doing, I broke every national record as a teenager in my first comp. Went on and powerlifted for 3 years as a teenager, multiple world championships and world records. Started getting a little bored of powerlifting at this point in time. For anyone who does have a bit of a history of powerlifting, this is a point in time where your equipped powerlifting was kind of all that existed. The first year that I went to the World Powerlifting Championships of WPC, Raw wasn't even a thing, and they just at a different federation run the first ever Raw World Championships, which literally had 8 competitors, which now it's pretty much the inverse. Raw's going to have everyone, and Equip's going to have 8 competitors. It started falling a little bit more out of love with powerlifting because 3/4 of the training session in the sport was trying to get into my equipment or figure out how to move my equipment. It got to the point where, you couldn't hit depth in a squat because your suit was too tight. Your suit's only perfectly made for you at a certain body weight. And if you gain or lose a couple of kilos, nothing works anymore.
Just to interject quickly, not to interrupt, for those listeners that have no idea about powerlifting at all, powerlifting is a sport where it's just a squat, bench, and deadlift. And there's a couple different categories. So you have a raw competition, and depending on the federation, there's a couple variations. So generally, raw is going to be belt or belt to knee reps.
Raw's always going to be a belt. And depending on the federation, it's either going to be knee sleeves, as in the neoprene soft knee sleeves, or knee wraps of somewhere between 2 and 2.5 meters, depending on the federation.
And equipped lifting?
Equipped lifting is going to be, obviously, belt knee wraps are available, but you also have your neoprene suits or denim suits, which look kind of like a soft suit does for your squat and your deadlift, and they look like a weird kind of like zombie, like a shirt that kind of puts you in a weird zombie arms position, but they're almost like, if you've ever done reverse band squats, it's kind of like doing reverse band lifts, because you have to, rather than just squat down using your own leverages and squat back up, in a reverse band squat, you can kind of maximize it by keeping the bar path as straight up and down as possible, and that creates the most stretch and shoots you back up. With a equipped squat, rather than letting your knees have any forward flexion so you can maximize quad activity, you really almost want to push yourself back into the squat as much as you can, because that creates the most spring, and then that kind of slings you back up. So it's Look, I'm not going to say one is better than the other. I'm in a very unique situation where unofficially at least, I've squatted 900 pounds or 14 kilos, both equipped and raw at different points in time. And they're different. Like physically, in terms of like muscular effort exerted, the raw squat's way harder. There's no disputing that. In terms of technique and precision, you have to be more precise in the suit. So it's almost, I think the best analogy is motor racing. Raw powerlifting is like the V8s, where equipped powerlifting is kind of like Formula One. It's not necessarily better drivers, but there's a difference in equipment and difference in precision that's required with that equipment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something pretty unique. If you haven't seen powerlifting or especially equipped powerlifting, it's a bit of a full-on exhibition, isn't it?
Oh yeah, look, it's a very different show. It's one of those things I would recommend to a lot of people to have a crack at if they can. It's just so cost prohibitive, though. I think the biggest downfall that sport has. I mean, even if you go top of the line equipment as a raw powerlifter, you spend $220 on shoes, you spend $200 getting a couple of pairs of knee wraps, $100 getting a pair of knee sleeves, $70 getting a soft suit.
Got to get a belt.
Yeah, a couple $100 getting a belt, and you're good to go. Let's say $600. Sounds expensive. Compare that to equipped powerlifting, where you're like, well, I need all that, but I also need a squat suit, which is like $300, and a pair of squat briefs, which is like another $250, and a bench shirt, which is another $250, and a deadlift suit, which is another $200. But because they're so tight and bound up, do I need just one squat suit, or do I need two? Do I need a training squat suit, and then do I need my heavy comp squat suit? How many pairs of knee wraps do I need? I mean, your barrier of entry is a couple of $1,000s. So it's a difficult sport to get into and to convince people to give a shot. But yeah.
Okay, well that's powerlifting in a nutshell then. So just so everyone that's listening gets an idea of the sort of numbers you're lifting as a teenager when you were powerlifting, what are your sort of numbers, raw and equipped, and then how did you transfer into the strongman scene?
All right, so best numbers, raw and equipped as a teenager. Equipped, let's go roughly 18-ish at this point in time. I squatted 410, bench pressed 260, and deadlifted 315. Honestly, most of these were training numbers. My last year of competition, as often goes with equipped powerlifting, was pretty shaky. Like I said, you have to have everything set perfectly right in the day, and it's not like lacing up a pair of footy boots where it doesn't make that much difference. It's kind of like, hey, I pulled the squat suit up 5 millimeters too high and I don't have enough tension, or I pulled it 5 millimeters too low and now there's too much tension and I can't hit parallel. And I had my last few comps in equipped powerlifting just went horrendous for reasons like that. My best raw numbers at that point in time were about 340-ish in the squat, 210, 215 in the bench. And deadlift was pretty similar, still about the 300-ish sort of mark.
And guys, I know I have a few American listeners listening. This is in kilograms, not pounds, so you can times that by 2.2. So he's lifting some serious weight as a teenager here.
Yeah. From there, that whole, mucking around with equipment kind of aggravated me a little with powerlifting, and my dad had showed us the World's Strongest Man competition on TV, and I think the first event that I saw, I'll be lying if I said I could remember what year's World's Strongest Man it was, but they had a car flip, which I believe Marius won, and I remember just looking at him flipping over a car, and always been a huge Incredible Hulk fan. Can't wait for Endgame to come out. Free shout out to Marvel there. Saw him flipping over a car. I was like, wow, that guy's like as close as a human being can be to being the Hulk. I want to do that. And then sort of...
It's funny you mentioned that, because as soon as you told me about Strongman, I went home, Googled it, and the very first clip that I saw was a giant Icelandic man doing a huge deadlift, then jumping up, ripping his shirt off and shouting, "I'm so powerful!" I was like, John Paul, this could be the sport for me. I like this. This is fun.
Yeah, Strongman was always fun because it gave you a little bit more opportunity to be a bit of a showman with it as well, where powerlifting and Olympic lifting are relatively awesome feats of strength, I'm talking it down, but relatively dry in terms of celebration. But yeah, like I said, saw that, just thought this looks really cool. The sport was almost non-existent in Australia at that point in time, was totally non-existent in WA. So I sort of just started getting my own equipment together and training with no real direct hey, this is the pathway to kind of get to Australian championships or anything. Started training. Another powerlifter, Matt Van Bunigen from down Collies Way, also had intended to do strongman at that point in time, and went over to do Australia's Strongest Man on an invite. Then sort of got the opportunity to run strongman in WA. I did a couple of comps that he ran, and I won W.A Strongest Man in my second competition.
Do you know what year that was?
No, but I was 20 at the time. 19 at the time, sorry.
19, okay.
My first comp was when I was 18. So we can backtrack from 11 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Late 2000s, yeah. From there, he sort of decided that he didn't really want to have much to do with strongman anymore, and he wanted to focus on powerlifting. So he sort of handed the reins over to me. So I got the fun task of running competitions while also trying to compete, which created mild controversy. Probably would have created more controversy now with there's a larger competitive base, but mild controversy where I was both running and competing in competitions. People were like, oh, you're always picking the events that you like. It's like, well, no, I'm not. I actually was getting the head of the federation at that point in time to pick all the events for us. I was like, hey, what's the stand do you want? What events do you want? I don't want to be picking this for exactly that reason. From there went on to Australia's Strongest Man for the first time at the same time Nev did. Nev won that year.
The 105ers.
Yeah, I got fourth in the heavies, and then I continued on competing for a couple of years after that. I got sixth the following year, but that was like 5 months after having my pec reattached, so definitely not 100% that year. And then I followed that up with two very close second places. Then made my professional debut in 2015. Unfortunately, well delayed because of the pec tear again in 2015 at the Australian Arnold, where I got 8th overall out of a really strong international field. I mean, talking guys like Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, Christoph Radzikowski, Robert Oberst. So you had 5 guys that were top 10 at World's Strongest Man the year before. I got my best placing at that event was I got 3rd in the car walk, broke the national record. Brian Shaw got the world record, and I was under a second behind where he was. I felt like I could have done a bit better in the event if I had more confidence in myself in that particular event. But look, you live and learn. Unfortunately, though, after that, had a fun bout of injuries, which started with a mild cartilage tear in my knee, which in retrospect now I barely want to count, because after getting the surgery done on that, I was back to squatting 300 for reps within like 15 days or something like that. It was fastest recovery that the surgeons ever had back to high level performance post arthroscope. Then following that, I followed that up with mucking up both hands, torn long head of my bicep, 2 quad tears, bellies that didn't require surgeries, and torn tricep February 2018, which in all honesty was the final nail in the coffin in terms of professional competition. But look, still actively involved in the sport. I still run all the competitions in WA. I help officiate competitions over East, particularly the international stuff. I just officiated the 2019 Australian Arnold, and then I've still got a couple of records that I wouldn't mind having a crack at. So Australian squat records, one I've always wanted to have an attempt at. Big goal's always been squatting 1,000 pounds, so 455 kilos. So might have a crack at that later this year, depending on how training's going, but no longer in a rush to do anything. And look, national record for the heaviest yoke is 610, and I know I could have beaten that. In fact, I had done a little more than that just before I tore my bicep. But look, didn't do it on the day, so it doesn't count. And heaviest yoke ever carried in the world is, I think, 715. So maybe one day look to have a crack at that as well. So
yeah,
still a couple of goals, but just not as total competition based. But yeah,
Sure. All right, so it sounds like a pretty nasty run of injuries.
Unfortunately, but
it tends to
such
happen.
is life.
And I guess when you're lifting things, gym is actually quite a safe thing for the majority of people. When you're lifting things that are so incredibly heavy, there's going to be freak accidents, just accidents, even small things that can really sort of set off quite major injuries. I wanted to touch base with you on, or pick your brain at least, on your training philosophy as you developed through Strongman and how it changed, and if you think that how you trained or your pure size. For those that are only listening, you're sitting at about 180 kilos at the moment. And from my experience knowing you through Strongman was always sort of between 160 and 180, maybe 185.
Yeah, the heaviest I ever competed at, which was the Arnold's, was about 187.
About 187.
And that was probably overall peak of my strength at that point in time. I never really tested any maxes at that point other than what needed to be done for the competition, but I really felt what you do, I hit X amount of reps at X weight and I kind of feel I could have done whatever, which training numbers, but who cares, sort of things. Like that's where I felt was my absolute peak then, and I just feel like I've made improvements since then, but it's been very limited and up and down, and I still feel capable of at least lower body wise hitting some better numbers. But yeah, anyway, training philosophy wise, that last couple of years I had Jeremy Hogg, who's a international, he's actually a very accomplished strength athlete, international professional competitor in strongman, Highland Games, as well as grip events. In terms of grip, absolutely elite. One of the absolute strongest grips in the world. And I believe runner-up as a national at shot put nationals in New Zealand one year as well. With I'll be lying if I can remember his throw. I think it was 17 or 18ish, somewhere around there, which is a very solid shot put. I had Jeremy training me that last couple of years, and it was probably the smartest training that I'd done in strongman. It was relatively minimalistic when it came to assistance work, and it was doing enough volume on the events to continually improve. And it was basically the way the program works. We had 6 events in that competition. We would do between 1 and 3 of them each day, depending on what event it was. And some days intentionally planned as one, so it was a bit more rest. Trained 4 days a week, so it was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and we'll basically do between 1 and 3 events, and then 1 to 2 assistance exercises, mainly an upper back exercise, a tricep exercise, or a hamstring exercise. And then you'd kind of have a bit of a rotation. So say with the car walk that we had that year, you'd sort of do the car walk 1 week. So the weight we had for the car walk was 435. You'd go 1 week, we'd sort of go like 370, 380-ish, and you do like say 4 or 5 speed runs. And then the next week you'd go a bit heavier, say like 460, 470-ish, and do 1, maybe 2 heavy runs, but a shorter distance. The comp distance was 25, so the heavy runs were doing like 10s to 15s. The short runs were doing 15s to 20s. There was no point in taxing yourself really doing the full distance till sort of the last 2 weeks of training. We basically just went everything at event weight, 1 run through, 2 events per day. And it was weird. I felt almost like I wasn't training at all, like I was massively underdoing it, but went really well into that competition. Prior to that, my training was almost like a survival of the fittest kind of thing. It was like hey, let's see. It was real dumb progressive overload, and it was always like, load is king. There was no thought of technique, no thought of volume. It was just, I'm deadlifting tonight. What can I work up to in a single? I'll do a single there. Maybe I'll drop back and, hit a couple of, lighter reps. Now I'll just do another single that's heavy. And you just it was very grindy and heavy. You did wear yourself down, your CNS down very quickly. And I guess now my training's changed a fair bit again. Like I said, squat's my major focus at the moment. I've got Nathan Baxter, who, biggest bench press ever performed by an Australian still, even several years removed from the sport, training us at the moment. And it's a lot more volume than I used to do, but it's very sub-maximal. Like I said, my max squat I feel at this point in time it's going to be somewhere over 400, but my working weight tonight was 325, and and only for sets of 3, so it was more of a focus on speed, precision, keeping my posture a lot more upright rather than bending forward. And it's just, if you keep doing everything right, eventually everything's going to fall into place. There's no need to hurt yourself. There's no need to strain yourself. Just keep making steady progress. And the idea is, if you do it right this week, you're recovered enough by next week to make that little continual improvement. And each week just tack a little bit further ahead,
Do you like to program in deloads at the moment? Like, do you build for 3-4 weeks, have a week sort of quite removed from the heavy loads, or are you just sort of, because it's quite submaximal, just progressively each week tacking a little bit extra on leading into a comp?
I guess we work off. Nathan's funny, and I actually really agree with him. He says, he doesn't really have to give you a training program or a plan. It's a training idea. The concept is, we're going to do this on Wednesday, being the squats. Monday, we're going to do these exercises. Saturday, we're going to do these exercises. Friday, we're going to do these. But the truth is, that works in a bubble. In reality, I worked 63 hours last week. Am I at 100% training tonight? No. Did I train Monday and Tuesday this week like I normally do? No. It's a lot more self-regulated. The truth is, the best way to put it is, just be honest. If you feel like shit, we cut the volume back. If you really can't do a training day, don't do it. Because anytime you start grinding through the days that you just can't in your head, wake up and go, you know what, I really want to be getting up and going to the gym this morning, or I finished work and I really want to be going, putting some heavy, bars on my back to do some squats. You don't do it, because that's when you just start grinding yourself into the dirt, and that's when you start going backwards
and getting injuries.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess digging into the strongman, regardless of when you're competing, or now you run all the WA events, W.A Strongman, which I'm going to be linking all the info in the description of the video and the podcast.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's not a problem. And if you haven't done strongman before, get involved. He runs novice comps to in line with the normal comps, so there's lighter weights and it's a bit more of a friendly welcome into the sport. One of the big issues, you said there's a barrier to entry, is cost in powerlifting. Similar in strongman, just because the equipment is. There's a lot of gyms don't have the equipment. If you want to get it made, it is quite expensive.
Yeah. Look, a few places have made it a lot more accessible. Especially if you're chucking, let's just say, powerlifting. Okay, you can find powerlifting equipment at literally any gym. At pretty much any gym you go to should have a rack, a bar, and a bunch of plates, and somewhere to deadlift and somewhere to bench. So you don't really have to come up with your own stuff. Powerlifting, strongman, if we go, okay, let's go minimalist equipment. You need, a pair of shoes, and not even like a super specialist pair of shoes. You can just go a good solid soled pair of shoes. I recommend something like your Adidas, like high tops, which just have that solid rubber sole, nothing with those air bubbles in it. And you can probably pick them up for $80 to $100 for a pair of shoes. You can use those for every event if you want to. Yes, you can get more fancy and use squat shoes for ollie shoes for the pressing and stones and whatever else. But if you need one pair of shoes, you can get that. You need a pair of knee sleeves. I'll probably recommend a pair of elbow sleeves. Probably a belt and a pair of straps. So in terms of personal equipment, you're looking at a couple $100 maybe, if you want to get all the equipment before you start. You can also get cheaper versions of a lot of the stuff to cut down the barrier of entry to begin with. Especially if you're just wanting to give it a shot. Most supplement stores, like Nutrition Warehouse, where I work, coincidentally, you can buy a decent enough weightlifting belt to kind of get yourself started for $40. A pair of figure eight straps is going to cost you $20. You can get into it relatively cheap. Even in terms of buying your own equipment, you got a few places like Flex Fitness, which offer some really cheap packages to get a lot of your equipment. You go. Bare minimum you need, you get a yoke, a pair of farmers, a log, and an axle, and as a good package, they'll probably do it for about $500-600 for you, and then you need some plates and whatever else. But that's if you're setting it up as a home gym. More and more, you're getting more facilities that actually offer strongman now. So, obviously, here at the Strength Institute, they've got a really good selection of strongman equipment. The Muscle Pit's got a great selection. PTC Perth have a decent. Rucci's Gym Perth. Still PTC as far as I'm concerned, have a decent set of equipment. Legendary Lifting in Perth are also pretty well set up, and heading further down south, I know Goldsport Kennedy had a really good setup, but I believe they might have moved a lot of their equipment to a secondary location. More and more CrossFit gyms are picking up strongman equipment as well. And even then, I know all the raw fitnesses tend to have at least a little bit of gear on hand. So, yeah, you can find access to the equipment a lot more easily now than what you used to. Things like stones are generally going to be a little more selective in where you will or won't find them, but you can generally get enough equipment to have a play and go, hey, carrying yokes is fun, or this shit's too painful and I don't want to do it anymore, for relatively cheap before you really overcommit to being part of the sport.
There you go. No excuse, guys. Plenty of gyms have the equipment now, so go give it a shot. What would you recommend for someone getting into strongman as a base or the bare bones training they need to do? I found when I was training with you, we would run usually one event on two sessions a week, and we'd have the events day where we'd run 3 to 4 events, and we had a supplementary exercises. We would sort of try to match muscle groups. Powerlifting being a great base for strongman as well. But what's the most beneficial sort of exercises or training regimes that you think have good crossover into strongman?
Look, your big exercises, your squats, deadlifts, overhead press, to an extent bench, upper back movements, they're going to make you good at any strength sport and make you better in terms of athletic performance. If you're not doing all those movements, I think it's Joe DeFranco. His method is basically need a push, a pull, a squat, a carry, a twist, and a
hinge.
Hinge. There you go. That's your big 6 or 7. I can't remember what it was. Yeah. 6 move, whatever it is. Look up some of Joe DeFranco's stuff. He lists them out, but obviously strongman encompasses all of those. Squats, pretty self-explanatory. Carry, yoke, farmers, sandbags. A push, a log, a bench press. Deadlift covers. Deadlift. Good mornings. They cover your hinges. A pull can also be like a row or something like that, or a chin. That's your basis there. In terms of programming for strongman, I'm a big fan of the way that I and Nevin were training, just a little bit smarter than what I was. Pair things up. Like, I really like going. The way that we had it before was, light squat or
speed or dynamic squats.
Yeah, then heavy yoke, and then the following week we'd go heavy yoke.
Speed yoke.
Speed yoke, heavy squats.
Yeah.
Same kind of rotation when it came to a strongman press, like a log or an axle, and then bench, and then do strict press as an accessory. Same sort of split with deadlift or frame carry and farmers, and then that true events day, that's where you chuck in your medleys, your stones, your sandbag carries, all the extra stuff that you can't really fit in that base program there. So I always thought that was a really good method if you have access to it. If you don't, if you have to go to 2 facilities, which I know had been a situation for a lot of people, follow a powerlifting-esque split for during the week: a squat day, a press day, a deadlift day. On your press day, especially if your goal is strongman, I would still try and get a strongman press in there, like a yoke, like a log or an axle. If you can't, strict press, and then do 3 to 4 events on a Saturday. One of them being a press if you can't get the log in or the axle in during the week, and then obviously a deadlift day. So they're the 2 ways I'd sort of look at going. Keep it relatively simple. It's lifting weights,
It's getting as strong as you can get. That's it. Well, what I really love about strongman is it's sometimes can get a little bit tiresome doing the same thing in the gym every day, whereas strongman you can really have so much variation, and it's just so much fun to pick up something heavy and move with it. That's not your typical squatting on the spot, deadlifting on the spot, overhead pressing on the spot. You're moving around with these events, and it's just another whole dimension to strength. Being able to move in an awkward position with a heavy weight is a pretty good attribute to develop, I would say.
Oh, definitely. I mean, look, and like Nevin was saying, that they're good alternatives to stuff you're doing. I did a seminar for some CrossFit athletes a while back, and it was obviously strongman but angled towards CrossFitters. And I was like, well, yes, strongman does show up in CrossFit events from time to time, but what's kind of how do I feel I can give them the most value here? And I guess the way I sort of pitched it really was, look, think about it this way. It was Mike Newton, a professor, who told us this. And the biggest thing I took from it, I remember this clearly, was the best training program is the one that the athlete's going to follow. So I was like, well, look, if you've got squats in your program, but it's week 80 of squats, and you're like, man, I am bored of squats and I just don't want to do a squat. You know what? Sub out squats for doing your yoke that week. Oh, but it's not the same. No, it's not the same, but you're working the same muscles. You know, it's going to be fun.
And you're working hard.
Exactly. You're working hard. You're working the same muscles, and it's going to be fun again. You know, switch it out for a week or two till you feel like squatting again. Go back to it. Program in a cycle of yoke. You know, stop squatting for a while. Take a little bit of stress off your hip flexors and your hip joints. Let them recover a bit. Do something else. Same deal. You know, with your Olympic work. Do it with an axle for a couple of weeks. You know, make it a bit more challenging, a bit different. Work a couple of different attributes. You know, chuck some farmers in for some extra grip and some extra upper back work. Just make it fun. You know.
Yeah, you see that in normal training as well. It's adherence. It's the same with everything. You want to lose weight, stick to a plan, a nutrition plan. If you want to get stronger, stick to your gym plan. But you have to adhere to it. And if you miss a session, get back in there. Yeah. Don't take the rest of the week off as well and start on Monday, which is a pretty common thing that people like to do. But yeah, I can't agree more. Adherence is really important. And just do whatever it takes to make sure you're going to get into the gym and do that training. Even if it means making it a bit lighter or changing things up. That's great advice.
I mean, the thing that I hate hearing the most from any athlete that I've trained or have trained is, there's very, very few athletes that you'll ever encounter that legitimately go, I will do whatever it takes no matter what this exercise is, and I will, grind away at it relentlessly no matter if this exercise makes me want to put a pistol in my mouth and pull the trigger. John Wellborn, who obviously was pretty involved in CrossFit a while and NFL offensive lineman for about 10 years, I remember him having a chat to, I feel like an old man forgetting shit here, dude from Starting Strength.
I'm blanked.
Yeah, anyway, dude from Starting Strength, shout out to you as well, great book. But anyway, he was sort of talking about, for the NFL guys doing high pulls, and like tie flips instead of doing cleans and snatches. And the guy was like, oh, but, cleans and snatches have all these benefits and this and that. He goes, yeah, but, these guys have got so much other shit to learn. They've got, a playbook to learn. They're in there to develop an attribute. They're not in there to, spend 4 years developing the skill of how to clean proficiently before they actually start making any progress. That's no benefit to them. I said, on top of that, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. Oh, but, they're high-level athletes. They should have the dedication to do whatever it takes. He goes, yeah, they are high-level athletes, but they don't need to be doing that. And I said, he goes, if it's a good strength coach, you should be pushing them to do that. He goes, yeah, it's not how it works there. You start telling, Mr. Quarterback at $16 million a year, you need to be learning how to clean properly. You need to be here every day so I can teach you this. He goes and speaks to the general manager and goes, you know what, this Nevin guy who's our new strength and conditioning coach, not a big fan of him. Either he leaves or I leave. And I sit there and go, S&C coach, star quarterback, S&C coach, star quarterback. Sorry, dude, you're out.
Yeah, star quarterback or SMC coach. I mean, I clearly you picked the SMC coach. maybe not. That's good advice for people starting out then, guys. But let's talk a bit more about W.A Strongman, which is sort of your business company. How do you run it?
It is run as a business. I can't say non-for-profit because we do turn a profit, but I don't pocket any of that profit. The profit is fully reinvested back into the sport, and it's about developing the sport. So if let's just say we make, $2,000 in a calendar year, that'll generally be seen as either $2,000 worth of new equipment for us to run competitions with, like we're looking to get like a decent PA system and a proper competition trailer to transport all our equipment around. That's the next purchase we're making, or it'll be $2,000 worth of new equipment for the athletes to actually be competing with. So that's realistically how we work. And I do offer a very limited amount of coaching. Not because I don't want to offer more, but I also want to offer a level of service and feedback with coaching, and especially the last couple of weeks with my full-time job, it gets hard to offer that level of service, and I'm very lucky that the people I do have at the moment are quite understanding that I will get back to them with all their feedback. It just might take me a little bit of time depending on what else is going on. So yeah,
sure. Well, and then in terms of running these competitions, because W.A Strongman is is basically the hardest strongman in WA. There is some other in and out, but really you run 4 comps during the year. I think there's 3 qualifiers and a state championships. There's pathways to the Australia Strongest Man, pathways to Arnold Classic. So before we dive into the sort of that line of thought, how do you run a comp? I mean, for someone that hasn't done one and wants to know what to expect, how do you lay out a competition for the day? How do you pick the events? And what do you need to take into consideration?
All right, so basically a standard event, any event we run in WA is generally going to be 3 events. We are looking to do a couple of standalone events, but different discussion there. Essentially, the way we look at it is we want to go something leg dominant, something back dominant, a press, wild card event, for lack of a better way to put it, and then some kind of a load. So something leg dominant, most common variations you'll see would be, a squat, a yoke. I guess a truck pull would fit into that. Logistically, truck pulls, especially with like 30 plus athletes at the moment, are super hard to run. I'd love to do it, but you're talking like a 4-hour commitment for one event doing a truck pull for 30 plus athletes. Back dominant, deadlift, farmer's walk, frame carry. I guess things like your frame carries, farmer's walks, they also incorporate your grip strength as well. Press, axle press, log press, press for reps, press for max, some kind of a press medley. Your wildcard events, look, it could be all sorts of things. I mean, we've done, sandbag carries for max distance. We've done, we did a grip medley at the last state championships, which was an event that I really kind of wanted to run for personal interest. And I think it was 50-50. I think it was a great challenge, and as a competitor event, it really tested an interesting attribute. I don't think a lot of the crowd had quite enough appreciation for it, and the truth is, strongman it is a sport 100%, but it also is entertainment. It's very much that wow factor.
And to be fair, it's a niche sport, so
yes.
you wanna entertain people to get the interest.
Exactly. Yeah. The interest is created from people doing cool things. Seeing someone squat with a bar, if you appreciate how heavy that is, that's great. But seeing someone squat with a big axle with, 3 big truck tires either side, look, that could weigh 40 kilos, but it still looks super impressive,
Not that your comps are light, they're all super heavy still.
No, not at all. It's just, look, easy example, our axle Scott setup, if you go the bar plus the 3 tires, it weighs in at 260, which is a good weight. You start asking around to people, hey, look, we've got this big, thick, solid bar here. It's got 3 big truck tires either side. What do you think it weighs? Oh, it must be at least 300 kilos. Oh, no, heavier than that. I reckon it'll be 310. Oh, maybe not quite that. It might be 280. No one guesses the right weight. Everyone guesses more, And that's the cool thing about it, because it's big, because it's impressive, because it's weird. It looks heavy and interesting. Circuit carry medley was another cool one that we had as another wildcard event. So another carry, but rather than a back carrier in your hands, it's in the crook of your arms. So
Circuit carry.
Yes. So testing out a few different attributes. We like to keep things kind of as varied as we can throughout the year. Events definitely will get repeated, but we try and minimize repeats as much as we can throughout the year for 2 reasons. One, we do actually have a good group of fans that come along to every comp we run to watch, which is something that I've noticed has happened the last couple of years, which is awesome for growth of the sport. The second thing is, as a competitor, we get a lot of people who just love doing the comps. And if every single one of the comps is the same 5 events, you're not going to get as many people that want to compete multiple times throughout the year. And honestly, for myself running it, it's fun to have different things to run. It's different logistical challenges. It's just cool to set different things up, and it's just fun for myself. I love seeing what people can do. The best thing for me is the women's division's been one of the most fun things we've had recently, because we go, all right, well, this is what we think is going to be a good weight, for the women's axle press, and the first one will come out and do 3, and the next woman comes out and does 5. You're like, okay, we think we've got this right weight. And then the third woman comes out, and does 9. You're like, okay, well, maybe she's going to be the winner. And the next 2 women come out who, very high level CrossFit athletes, and they both do like 20 plus, and you're like, maybe we should up the weight a little bit. You know? And that's been the best thing having that happen, because we get stuff like that happen, like, all right, well, we have to raise the standard, and by us having to raise the standard, it raises the standard of all the athletes. You know, it's weird. If you go, I want to squat 200 kilos, you probably get there eventually, but you don't have an end date. If you go, I want to squat 200 kilos by December 31st, 2019, you've got a direct end date. So every session you go to, it's got more of a purpose. I have to do this in this session to be able to do this in the next session, so I can be ready to do this, you know, December 31st. So I really love seeing all the athletes, you know, kind of pushing each other, pushing us. I love to be proved wrong, as dumb as it sounds, you know. Nothing gives me more joy than being proved wrong, for me to go, I think that's going to be too heavy, let's go 10 kilos lighter than what we thought, and then everyone smashes out of the park. It's like, well, I messed up, but I'm happy to have messed up, because it shows that everyone is performing well. You know, it's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, it is, and it is true. The standard has skyrocketed over the last eight years since I last competed. I mean, there's not only a lot more competitors, but you have a lot more guys that are, you know, going to Australia's Strongest Man.
Yes.
Matt Lynch Blanche, he's gone to World's Strongest Man as a 105 kilo athlete. Just some real monsters throwing some incredible weights around, and we're lucky enough to be able to go and see these comps several times a year, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, look, next comp is April 27th, so a couple of weekends from now. If anyone's available, down at Hillary's Boat Harbour, we'll be kicking off the comp at 10. We'll be finishing up between 4 and 5. First event is the axle press for max weight. If you can only make it down for one, please make it down for that one. Naramu Afni, who is Australia's Strongest Man under 90 kilos, he's going to be going for the world record in that event. So the world record is currently 165 kilos. He's doubled 161 in training, and he's made it look pretty damn easy. I think he's got a real good shot at it. I know he would love to have everyone's support.
Well, that'd be great. That would be great. And it's just touching back again on what you were talking about, how you set up your comps to run. Again, for people that are getting into the sport, that's a pretty good way to set out your training.
Yeah.
You know, if you know in a competition you're going to be having a heavy legs, a heavy overhead, a moving event, a loading event, some sort of medley where you string together a few different events into one, that's a good way to train. You know, split your training session up or your week up and address each of those issues in your training.
Exactly. I mean, look, like I said, in terms of running the comps as well, this is partial logistics thing, but I think it gives everyone a good way to gauge themselves. The way we set it out is everyone does the same events. We just change the weights. So we will run our 4 men's divisions, which is 80s, 90s, 105s, heavyweights. We run our 3 women's divisions, which is under 65s, under 82s, and open. And we'll also run novices for each of those divisions. And basically the way that we set it out is, if you're a heavyweight, you do these weights. If you're an under 105 or a heavyweight novice, you do roughly 10% less. If you're a 105 novice or a 90, you do roughly 10% less. And you kind of just work your way down the chain. And that gives you a good measuring stick, because you can kind of go, all right, well, I did the novice under 105 weights. This is how I compare to these top level 90s guys, which means that I should be able to step up and now give the 105 weights a go. Or at least the events, let's say the events for max, everyone does the same event for a max. So you might go, hey, you know, I really thought I wasn't ready to step up, but we had a max deadlift. I actually got more in the max deadlift than even the guys doing the qualifier weights. I should have done that next time. And lets you see directly who your competition will be, what results they're getting. You can go, all right, well, I did, 100 kilo hand farmers in 20 seconds. The top guy in the qualified division did 110 kilo hand farmers in 15 seconds. Okay, that's speed and weight that I've got to add, or they did it in 28 seconds. I reckon I might actually be able to beat that. It gives you a clear gauge of where you're at and how to train and plan and program moving forward.
Nice. And can you talk about the pathways? So, like I said, you run qualifiers.
Yep.
It goes to a state champs. I run the qualifiers now. Then we go to state champs.
Yes.
And then that qualifies the top place getters to go to Australia's Strongest Man or Arnold's. How does that pathway work to get to the higher level competitions?
Pretty much. How it works now is the Arnold's is, I guess, the focal point of Australian Strongman now. So we'll run a qualifier. If you compete in a novice and you win the novice, you then have to step up and do the qualifier at your next competition, or if you show what we believe is a level of competency. So if you come second in the novice, but you're half a point behind the guy who won and all your scores are comparable, we'll ask you to step up as well. But if you win, if you win, generally we're going to make you step up for the next competition. Then at each qualifier, the top 3 placings from that field will get invited to do the state championships. From the state championships, the top 25% of the field will be guaranteed a spot. So, easy example, we have 10 competitors. Competitor 1 and 2 in at the state championships are guaranteed a spot at the Arnold's. It's then invite basis down to the next. Invite basis basically till we fill out the field of 20 competitors. So we might go, all right, number 3 in WA, he was half a point off second, or up 2 points off second, or even 5 points off second. But if we actually look at his times, yes, he came in third in the yoke, but he was only half a second behind second, so he's good there. You know, you look across the board, all of his times were competitive. Let's put him up. Hey, third place over in New South Wales. Look, he really wasn't at the standard. He only competed 2 of the 3 events. Unfortunately, we're going to rule him out, you know. And you pick people based off placings and then secondary competency to decide the remaining spots. From the Arnold's, within Australia, top 10 at heavyweight, top 5 at 105, and top 2 at 90 and under 80 will get invited to do Australia's Strongest Man, which is an open weight division. There's no weight classes for Australia's Strongest Man. That's actually considered a pro level event now, as opposed to Arnold's is where you do Australia's Strongest Man per division. Winner of the heavyweight at the Arnold qualifies to do the heavyweight pro show the following year at the Arnold. Winner, I think top 3 at 105 get invites to under 105 World Championships. Top place at 90 gets an invite to the under 105 World Championships. And within the women, I think it's the same deal for heavyweight and under 82. Top 5 both go to Australia's Strongest Woman, and top 3 at under 65 get the invites. In regards to invites there professionally, I think it was top 3 that got to do Southern Hemisphere Strongest Women in the heavyweights, and the top 1 gets to do the amateur Arnold's in Ohio the following year. The under 82s, we have a direct link to a professional competition, so the winner of the under 82s also gets to do a professional competition as well. So it's a little more all over the place with the women, because it's still finding its feet a little bit more, and there seems to be more of a market for the middleweight women as opposed to the heavyweight women. I just feel that it comes down to, I think, total competition basis, because that 82 kilo division, you get a lot of the girls who are very big, very strong, very athletic, and too big for CrossFit. So you actually get a really high level competitor base there, and lots of participation. And participation is what creates interest in sport, you know. That's why there's more money in soccer than what there is in badminton, because more people play soccer than more play badminton.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, same sort of deal.
But it's growing. It is growing, and there's a lot of pathways. So,
yes.
And that's good as well. That's important. It's hard when there's no pathways, or they're foggy, or you don't know how you're going to progress to the next level. It's clean cut and strongman. Go to these events, qualify, and move on.
Pathways very much used to be invite based. So even getting to World's Strongest Man, it wasn't like you win Australia's Strongest Man, you're guaranteed an invite to World's Strongest Man. It's you win Australia's Strongest Man, and if the promoter likes you and wants to have you there, then you'll get an invite to World's Strongest Man. But now it's very clear, you win this, you get to this, you win this, you get to the next step, you win that, World's Strongest Man.
Fantastic. I guess to finish off, 2 things to finish off. What's in the future for you? You said you're looking at maybe chasing some records down, yes, but you've sort of hung up the full competition boots in terms of powerlifting and strongman. What records exactly are you going for, and when are we going to see it?
I look middle of this year, so August at Capo Nationals. I want to have I would like to be having a good crack at the Australian squat record then. Current record's 460. So I'd like to give that a good shot then. Will that stay the record for too long? Honestly, probably not. Even if I get it, there's a few really high-level squatters out there, but I feel if I can start putting some pressure, there's probably 5 really good squatters in Australia who I think are capable of beating that record, and if I can be one of the guys in that race, we can all kind of compete and push each other a bit, and hopefully get the first Australian to squat 500 kilos really soon.
That would be amazing.
Other than that, like I said, the Yolks Yellow record that I really want to chase. I mean, it's I guess
6:15.
6:15, yeah.
Okay.
So 6:20 is the mark I'll be going for.
6:20 is the mark. Wow.
I guess I've been relatively fortunate considering all the injuries I have. Yoke and squats were always my favorite events. So to be in a position where I sort of have had to hang out the boots, but I can still do my favorite little couple of events, I feel at least pretty blessed to be put in that situation rather than going, well, it's my knees that are all messed up and all I can do is, bench press now, and I never really liked bench pressing that much. So it could have been a lot worse.
Fair enough. Yeah, who needs bench press anyway? It's the most useless. It's the most useless exercise, and it's not because I'm terrible at it with these long arms, but it's useless. Squats all day.
Don't worry about benching. No one other than Nathan likes doing it.
Yeah, Nathan. Well, he's pretty good at it though. So the final thing that I like to ask people, and I'm going to chip in my 2 cents here as well, is if you have some advice for an up-and-comer in powerlifting or strongman or just any strength sport in general, what would yours be? I'm going to throw my advice would be 2 things. One is just do it. Start it. Enter yourself in. I've heard so many times, even in this gym, when I've asked people, hey, you going to jump in this comp? Oh, I don't think my numbers are going to be that good. I saw the numbers are posting up on Facebook. I think I'll be off. I'm like, hey, get in there and do it. You're not going to build confidence until you actually immerse yourself in it. And the faster or the more times you put yourself out there, and it doesn't matter whether you come first or last in that event, going out there and doing it is something that not a lot of people are doing. And so it puts you into an elite little group. And the more you do it, the more confidence and the more fun you're going to have with it. And the second bit of advice would be try to find someone stronger than you to train with. So when I first started training strongman, I was lucky enough to come train with you, and I put on some of the most strength that I've ever done in a short period of time. And it's because people that if you're chasing them, or even if you're not close to their weights, they're always going to gently bully, in our case, you to go a little heavier, or at least encourage you to be your best. And I think that's really important. Competition breeds success in my mind. And so if you are just training with yourself, or if you're the king of the gym and people aren't egging you on, at least, it's kind of sometimes it can be a little stagnant. So challenge yourself. Challenge yourself by jumping into comps, and challenge yourself to really get in the gym and work hard. Work hard is what's going to make you get those gains.
I think another one to add to that is if you can't find someone stronger than you, find someone who's coming up. Because one, you can pass your knowledge on to them, you can help them improve, and as they start to improve, you start going, ooh, this guy's on my heels a bit now. I used to have 80 kilos more than him on the deadlift, now I've only got 20. Then you start working a little bit harder because you want to maintain that title as king of the gym. You don't want to be giving it up.
I will maintain the fact that I actually beat you on a 265 kilo yoke for 25 meters. Dan, speed yokes.
You beat us on the speed run.
That's right. I beat him on the speed run. You heard it here, folks. All right. Anything else you want to address?
Yeah, of course. I'll just quickly jump back for a second to what you said about just jumping in.
Yeah.
I think a good analogy is, look, I think jiu-jitsu is a pretty hot sport at the moment. A lot of people are wanting to jump in and do it. No one kind of goes, oh, look, I really want to do jiu-jitsu, but I just want to make sure I can do a kimura and a rear naked choke before I go down and jump into a class.
Exactly.
People just go, I'm going to jump into class. You get tapped out 19 times the first time you show up, and you're like, shit, I better keep coming back and get better because I just got tapped 19 times. Treat a strength sport like that. It's not likely, unless you're an absolute freak, which is a few people out there like that you're going to rock up to your first powerlifting or strongman event and you're going to, break records or win the comp or anything like that. Just go down, have fun, and by doing that comp, you'll improve. A big thing that I'll really say, and maybe this is moving to the next step after what Nevin said, once you're like, hey, strength sports is my thing, I really want to give this a shot, find a good coach, find a good training group, and find some people that can be honest with you. If your technique is subpar, you want people to go, yeah, that looked terrible, and I don't want to see you blowing out your back, so let's fix it now. The next thing from that is listen to yourself, which is one thing I never did enough of. if your back hurts, well, there's a reason why your back hurts. You're not just, being a coward and not wanting to push through. Find out why it hurts, fix it up, fix your technique. And honestly, chances are it's the two reasons why things hurt in strength sports is, one, your technique's good enough, and two, the second reason why your technique's not good enough is probably because there's a muscular imbalance. If your back's really strong but your core's really weak, you're going to rely more on your back to help you lift it, and you're going to hunch over to do that. If your core's really strong but your back's really weak, you're going to tighten your abs up in a different way to kind of push it up. So fix those imbalances. And I think a big thing that a lot of people ignore the value of is find a good coach and listen to them. You want someone, like I said, like the training group, you want a coach who is going to be honest with you and go, hey, yes, we know you can deadlift 200, but we want to drop you back and build you back up doing it better. And in the long run, you'll deadlift more. Here's the plan. Let's follow the plan. Let's follow the process. We don't want to be maxing out every week. Do what I didn't do. Be smart about what you do. Listen to your body and find someone who's going to give you good advice and mentor you.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great advice. Dan, thanks very much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it.
And I'll be posting up some more videos on the channel during the week of Dan squatting speed reps at 325 kilos, looking really easy, by the way.
It felt pretty good. A little bit stiff, but moving really nice.
It looks pretty good from where I was standing. But again, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't done so already, help build the channel, like, share, subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.